and we felt there was a bit of a gap in the market for XRP, as well as also the fact that XRP, in terms of the XRP army, has a very large following globally, and we're generally part of that as well. So.
This episode is brought to you by Uphold, which is a great crypto platform that makes it easy to buy, sell, and stake crypto assets. Uphold has over 300 plus cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin and all the top altcoins, and they offer a crypto staking on over 19 crypto assets. I've been a user of the platform for many years. They are safe and reliable. They don't commingle or lend out your crypto funds, and they are 100% reserved. You can review their transparency report. Uphold also offers an amazing rewards program where you can earn up to 5.25% on stablecoins. This rewards program also allows you to get 24-hour early access to new tokens that they list. And to participate, you just simply have to open the app once per month, deposit $50 once per month, and trade $50 once per month. And the stablecoins that they support includes Ripple's RLUSD. You can earn up to 5% on that stablecoin and 5.25% on USBC. So if you'd like to learn more about Uphold and all the great services they offer, visit the link in the description. Hey folks, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and joining me today is Kevin Chin, who's the executive chairman and CEO of VivoPower, and Adam Traidman, who's the chairman of the board of advisors for VivoPower and the former CEO of SBI Ripple Asia. Kevin, Adam, great to have you both.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks,
We're
Tony.
happy to be here.
Yeah, great to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm super excited to speak with you both because we, of course, got the very big news of VivoPower adopting an XRP Treasury Reserve asset strategy. And you're doing much more than that. So I have a lot of questions for you. But let's kick it off with some quick introductions. Kevin, tell us a bit about your background and VivoPower as well.
Sure. Tony, thanks again. Background-wise, I've been an entrepreneur across different industries for 20 plus years, both from an operational and an investing perspective. My crypto journey actually started with buying XRP in 2016. So that was my first coin that I bought, and I was attracted to the utility and its mission then of, disrupting and improving payment flows around the world, particularly to emerging markets. I do a whole bunch of stuff in developing nations, both from a for-profit as well as non-profit perspective, and could see some of the real-life challenges there. Fast forward to today, when the opportunity came about to turn Vivo into a an XRP focus, not just treasury company, but treasury and DeFi solutions company. I really felt convicted to do that, as did the rest of the board. And fortuitously was able to meet Adam, and Adam's been instrumental, given his background and experience, to help us launch, and we're now in full-blown execution mode.
Yeah, that's exciting. Adam, I know of your background because we've spoken many times over the years, but for those who may not know you, give us a bit of background on yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Tony. And thanks again for having us on. It's great to talk to you again. I'm originally an engineer from Silicon Valley. I was actually in a completely different industry in chip design. Started my career at NASA and Caltech. Over time, after moving to the Valley, I became a serial entrepreneur. I've been the founding CEO of 5 companies, raised about $300 million for those companies, and was fortunate enough to build great products and teams and make my team's employees and shareholders money as a result of that by exiting those companies. I got into crypto about 10 years ago, or 2014. To be honest, I was really, really skeptical at first. I probably mentioned that to you when we spoke before. I was approached by an ex-employee of mine to get into crypto. He said, Bitcoin is the most important thing going on in your lifetime. I thought it was crazy. I didn't talk to him for a year. He's now a much wealthier man than I am. But about a year later, we joined forces and created the first Bitcoin, which at the time was the only cryptocurrency self-custody wallet that was in the Apple App Store on the day that Apple allowed Bitcoin apps. We built that business up to about 15 million users and 20 billion in assets on platform and sold it to Coinbase. I was at Coinbase for a while. Parallel to all that, as you mentioned before, I was the CEO of SVI and Ripple's joint venture in Asia, based in Tokyo, handling Ripple's Asia business mainly for cross-border financial transactions, remittances, and to kind of promote and license their technology to large banks, central banks in Southeast Asia and other parts of Asia as well. So got a lot of exposure. I sat on the board of Ripple Labs for a while, also very, very intimate with them. And so when Kevin approached me with the sort of vision for VivoPower, my background gave a unique perspective. And so I decided to join the company as the chairman of their advisory board. I think we've all been watching digital asset treasury companies after Michael Saylor's huge success with MicroStrategy, Metaplanet in Japan as well, obviously a huge success. And now there's, over 100 other ones out there. VivoPower was the first with XRP and made a big announcement, as you mentioned, a few weeks ago with a big financial raise on top of that in collaboration with Ripple. So that's exciting. But what really attracted me to Kevin and his team were they're not just another digital asset play. It's not just about how can I buy into the underlying asset, in this case, XRP, through a public equities market with their NASDAQ traded stock, VVPR. It's about their strategy to really grow the whole XRP ecosystem and really grow the pie. And they have material ways that they're doing that, from a venture fund to their own businesses promoting and adopting XRP as a payment method and a method of transferring money in a cross-border solution, as well as really trying to figure out how to support the ecosystem in a variety of new ways. So instead of just holding the asset like MicroStrategy is doing, the Vivo team is really trying to grow the overall XRPL ecosystem. And I think that's what brought me and my interest to the company, and what also keeps us really closely hitched to Ripple as well.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, this trend that is happening. It seems to be a paradigm shift of how corporates and enterprises can adopt crypto. And to your point, not just hold the asset, but go beyond that. Do you see this being a trend that continues to grow and a new way for companies to monetize and also preserve their wealth or the cash on their balance sheet?
Right. So, I mean, treasury management for any company, private or public, is the responsibility of the office of the CFO generally, right? And they have a variety of methods that they use in TradFi in order to try to make a return on their assets, their fiat currency and other assets that they're holding, right, as a responsibility to their shareholders, again, whether they're private or public. I think companies like MicroStrategy and VivoPower, we are the vanguard. We are the tip of the sphere, right? We are the ones who are pioneering this strategy of not only holding crypto on our balance sheets, but really trying to hit an MNAV that is higher than the net asset value, right? By doing things that go beyond just holding the asset. My theory, Tony, is today it's companies like us that are holding crypto on the balance sheet. Sometime in the not too distant future, every private and public company is going to be holding crypto on their balance sheet. It's just the right thing to do for your shareholders.
Wow.
And just to add to that, Tony, what we're seeing around the world is legislation being passed by governments, by stock exchanges, to allow companies to hold digital assets and crypto on their balance sheets, whereas previously, in countries like South Korea, Pakistan, the UAE, that wasn't permissible.
Kevin, for those who may not know of VivoPower and when you went public and so forth, tell us a bit about what the company does and when did you go public?
Sure. So we actually went public in late 2016. So we've been a listed company on NASDAQ for almost a decade. We started off as a solar development company, grew very fast, went from 0 to 20 mil EBITDA in 2 years. And that was really what kind of spawned the interest to take us public. Over the years, it's been, a choppy ride at times. And we, about 5, 6 years ago, also entered by acquisition into the electric vehicle business, albeit in a niche. It's a very large niche. It's sort of for off-road applications. So we do electric vehicle conversions for safari operators, for mining, for agriculture, so on and so forth. We decided to, about a year ago, spin out that business into a separate listed company. So we were looking to repurpose Vivo into a new business. And we've been working on this digital asset strategy for, since September last year. So that's a bit of the history.
Now, the decision to choose XRP as the asset, because there's Bitcoin, there's ETH, and others out there, was it because of your initial investment in XRP going back to your first foray in crypto assets, or was there another reason?
That was part of it. So I have genuine conviction in XRP and what it's doing and what it can do in terms of a raft of DeFi solutions, right, for markets around the world that we've been active in terms of investing and operating businesses. So that was a big part of it for sure. But also, by virtue of the fact that, I think there's more than 100 Bitcoin treasury companies as well, we felt that was, quite crowded already. And there are people doing it very well in the markets already. Similarly with Solana and ETH, there were already sort of other players, coming to market or already, launched. And we felt there was a bit of a gap in the market for XRP, as well as also the fact that, XRP, in terms of the XRP army, has a very large following globally. And we're generally part of that as well. So, that was some of the reasons.
And can people who right now can't access, let's say, an XRP ETF use this stock as kind of a pseudo ETF to get exposure to XRP?
Yeah, basically that's our strategy with respect to allowing those who would like to get exposure to XRP or Ripple in terms of, not just the token, but in terms of DeFi solutions. As Adam mentioned, we will be investing in companies that are building off the XRPL ledger. We are also committed to investing surplus fiat US dollars into RLUSD, which is the stable coin, for Ripple. So to the extent someone wants to gain exposure to XRP and the broader sort of Ripple ecosystem and our mission of helping to grow that pie, this is, a listed, regulated proxy for doing that.
That's right. So VVPR stock is basically a proxy in an equity form for XRP and also for sort of the entire ecosystem. Like Kevin said, in addition to investing in XRPL related companies, our goal with that is to help companies that can help us, right, earn yield on our XRP holdings so that we can actually earn yield on that XRP that we're holding, which will create hopefully an increase in our net assets, right? And hopefully a better return for our shareholders. That's the ultimate goal, right? So we're definitely a proxy for that. Here in the US, Tony, you can't, there's a big market, say, for MicroStrategy when people want to buy in their retirement accounts, right? Like their 401k or IRAs, right? There's no way to buy XRP there today. And
Right.
so you're right, VVPR offers a great proxy for folks who want to get XRP exposure, but otherwise can't directly.
And with the DeFi component, I'm curious about this. And is the yield, so to speak, going to be paid out in like a dividend?
Right. So that would be the plan. And so it would be a direct benefit for the users. Now, the current generation ETFs, like that you see for Bitcoin or whatever, they can't actually, or Ethereum, they can't actually go and generate a yield and do staking and other things, right? So even the upcoming XRP ETF will probably be held back in that scenario. So in this case, you're getting the benefit of that upside through the exposure and the equity. I think that's a real differentiator for potential investors.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I know a lot of institutions and folks are hunting for yield because they hold the asset, but if they can get the yield with it, that would be, that's really a great incentive.
Right. Can you imagine if Michael Saylor was doing that with MicroStrategy, just how much more that company would be successful? And that's why we're trying to kind of one up, that sort of standard model in the treasury space.
Sure. Now, as far as the purchasing of XRP, are you using the cash on your balance sheet or are you raising debt to do that?
We're raising equity to do that at the moment. So we have an anchor investor in His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz from Saudi Arabia. So he himself has been a holder of XRP since 2017. So that's how the kind of dots joined and why I was interested in the project as well with us. So at the outset, we're using equity to fund the build out of the Treasury and DeFi solutions strategy. In terms of debt, we don't have plans to take on debt at this stage to increase, but in due time, if it makes sense and if the cost of capital equation stacks up and the sort of risk reward stacks up, then we would consider doing so.
Mm.
This is similar to the Michael Saylor's model, Tony, where he always says dilution is accretive, which is an illogical thing to say, but he has proven that he's right, right? So it's a similar kind of thing. You issue more shares, right, and you
Right.
use that to buy the underlying asset, and then as a result, you end up ultimately outperforming the underlying asset, and so there's an appreciation, say in MicroStrategy stock price, that's pretty apparent.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there was an announcement of a partnership with BitGo for custody, as well as Flare for the DeFi yield. Tell us about those partnerships and how you foresee working with those folks.
Well, BitGo for custody, I've worked with BitGo since the beginning of BitGo, actually. Know the founders well and the whole team there. So there's a lot of trust. And we've been a customer of theirs many times before, or my companies have, right? And so yes, our press release talked about using them as a custody provider, as well as an OTC desk for our fiat conversions into XRP, and then to custody the XRP and RLUSD that we as a company are holding. So we're excited to be working with them. They're best in class, US based, and a really, really great team of people. When it comes to Flare, Flare is our first partner on the DeFi yield generation piece. Ripple's an investor in Flare. We've known the Flare team for a very long time. I have through my prior work in crypto. There's a lot of trust there. Ripple really highly recommends them as well. So they're going to be our first partner where we're entrusting XRP onto their network in order to generate yield.
Mm. Now, you mentioned also holding RLUSD, which is Ripple's stablecoin. Um, Obviously, you can generate yield from that in doing different things, but are you planning to also use the stablecoin for payments, whether it be cross-border, internal, or whatever it may be?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we're active through various parts of our business, particularly across, Southeast Asia, developing nations in Africa like Ghana and Kenya. And we've experienced, firsthand, and we still do experience it, the friction of, international wiring and sort of payments getting caught up in the SWIFT system. So RLUSD is, something that's growing itself, and we're committed to using that in terms of some of our businesses as well. So actually, in the next few weeks, we're going to start trialing that with regards to some of our Philippines-based businesses already.
And obviously, you're using RLUSD, and obviously the XRP ledger is connected to Ripple, but you're not working with Ripple directly. You're independent, right?
We're independent, but by virtue of Adam and others, we've formed a good relationship. We were at the XRP conference in Singapore, the Apex conference 2 weeks ago. So we met, all the senior guys and girls in the team. Felt very much welcomed, in terms of being part of the XRP ecosystem. Met with Hugo at Flare and his team. They were, very generous and warm in terms of introducing us to folks as well. So whilst it's not an official arrangement, if you like, at this stage, we know them, we work with them, and we genuinely want to help grow the pie.
Tony, I would say we're highly aligned with the Ripple vision, but we're obviously independent from them. One of the things that does that is beneficial to the overall ecosystem is we're not in any way sort of held back by the issues that they've had with the SEC, compliance and regulatory things that they need to deal with in their business and have been actually very successful in doing. But that gives us sort of a parallel track, if you will, right? And there's a lot of connections between what we do and what they do, and a lot of goodwill as well. But basically, it's all about growing the pie. And so, yes, we're very heavily aligned with them.
Now, a question I have, and I would ask Michael Saylor this if I got to interview him again, and some of the other folks who are doing these treasury strategies. Obviously, markets move in cycles, right? You have your bull markets, your bear markets, and there's volatility, and crypto is very volatile. Let's say the price of XRP continues to go up, but eventually there's a turn down in the market, as with all markets. How does that affect the XRP you're holding, and how do you prepare for that?
Great question, Tony. And this was a discussion we had in Singapore actually with some of the senior leaders at Ripple. And what we said to them is that right now, and let's be upfront about this, that there is some fervor in the markets in terms of treasury-based strategies, if you will. I've been in the markets for 25 years as an investor, IPO'd 5 different companies. And so I've seen all the cycles, have been through it with VivoPower as well. And what we said to Ripple's leadership is that what's really important for us is that we will still be here in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, irrespective of what goes on in the market. And the market is inherently volatile, more so in crypto than the stock markets. That is an asset, though. That is an asset that you can generate yield, you can make returns off, and that's part of our goal here is to acknowledge that volatility, to take advantage of it in a sense, to create value and to create yield. And I think with regards to even in I think recent weeks we've seen some correction, if you will, in terms of some of the listed treasury plays. That doesn't bother us. I think it was always coming, and that is why I think in terms of our strategy of not just being an asset holding treasury company, but also engaging and building DeFi solutions that ultimately generate income and cash. That's the biggest point of differentiation. That's the reason why we'll still be here in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, creating value for our shareholders.
Got it. That absolutely makes sense, and I see how critical the yield component is, not just owning the asset, but being able to earn off of it, and can help position you through maybe a bear market.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, I don't know if this makes sense, but I think you both know the what's happening with tokenization, and a lot of companies are looking to put stocks and equities on the blockchain. Are you looking at potentially tokenizing your stock? And would that happen on the XRP ledger and other blockchains as well?
Yeah, great question again, Tony. I think at this stage, we have talked about it. I think there's still too much regulatory risk and uncertainty with regards to doing that. Really, there's only I mean, there's really only one company of note that's done it, which is PayPal. And they did have some issues, under previous, SEC leadership. That's gone away for now, but our view is it's probably too early to try it. And the whole issue of being defined as a security is a very nuanced one. And right now we don't feel it's the right focus for us at this juncture. It doesn't mean we won't do it in future, but I think regulation needs to be far clearer before we embark on that.
Yeah, great point. Because here in the United States, we're still waiting for clarity. The market structure regulations still being worked on. I know in the EU they have the micro regulations, and I'm not sure if Hong Kong and these other jurisdictions have put out regulations, but so, the tokenization component, there's still more clarity needed from major global markets.
Exactly, exactly.
With regards to the strategy around XRP, do you see this being a long-term strategy that, this asset class is still young, it's going to mature, and are you looking, what type of time horizon, I guess, is my question, are you looking at with holding this asset and continuing to buy it as well?
We think in sort of 5-year cycles when we formulate strategy and execution plans. So we definitely see the growth in XRP, XRPL, RLUSD, and the DeFi ecosystem around that over the next 5 years. And I think more broadly, as you would have seen, Circle's done very well post IPO. And that's starting to elevate to public awareness, the opportunity with stablecoin, number one. But number two, I think this whole area of DeFi has been, you know, confined to crypto circles. But I think over the next 5 years, it's going to become more and more understood and mainstream. And without a question that there is a very strong set of tailwinds, behind that. So we definitely see over the next 5 years a commitment to and a building out of and contributing to the XRP ecosystem, buoyed by these tailwinds.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how this all plays out. It's an exciting time, and to see this technology growing and getting adoption from institutions, public companies like yourself. It's just amazing, and I'm just fascinated as to what the new innovations are going to be, and use cases and much more. As far as your outlook on the crypto market, and Kevin, you can kick off, and then I would love to get Adam's take as well. Where do you see this market this year? Do you see legislation getting passed? Do you see a lot of innovation happening and kind of happening globally as well, if it's not just the United States?
I think the regulatory settings and not just in the US, but globally are becoming far more accommodating very, very quickly. As I mentioned, even countries like Pakistan, hitherto, 6 months ago, you just don't talk crypto. But now it's being embraced, and we're seeing that, in many countries around the world. So that is very important in terms of then providing confidence to investors, to entrepreneurs, to accelerate, building out of, DeFi solutions, which are much needed. And I would argue even more so in developing nations than in more developed nations. So that's exciting. And from a personal perspective, as I mentioned, we've got projects and businesses in the Philippines, which we can see tangibly the benefits of some of these solutions that are, being built at the moment. So I think for sure there will be volatility. There always is. I think as the asset class matures, that volatility will start to taper off as it does, in all forms of assets as institutional adoption increases. But still, it's not gonna. It's going to be a non-linear journey, right? But the direction of travel will be onwards and upwards for sure.
I'll
Adam.
go ahead and add to that for you, Tony. So I think the inflows due to institutional buying and the ETFs, what they do is they create a really strong floor for the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum essentially, and sort of a stable floor for crypto in general. I'm not including kind of like the altcoins, right? But the top 10 on coin market cap. Creating that more stable floor means, as Kevin said, things won't be as volatile, but it also means the downside risk, I think, is going down. It's one of these, it's too big to fail. The snowball, continues to grow. It's, whichever analogy you prefer to use, right? So I think that that's great for the industry. And now couple that with the fact that those ETFs got approved under the previous administration, whereby the SEC was super anti-crypto, right? And you look at what we have now, like the next 3.5 years are going to be the most incredible for crypto that we've ever seen. We've finally got, I don't know if I would say regulatory clarity, but I would say that we've got a green field in terms of being able to innovate. And I think that for the current length of time that the current administration is in the White House, you're going to see a lot happen. I've heard hedge funds and VCs in this space, they're saying now is the time. We're going to do everything right now, right? It's never been a more friendly environment. So there's a lot of money being poured into the industry. It's not just about investment in any given asset. It's about in building out the ecosystem and building out new solutions, right? So, I probably said this to you when we spoke years ago as well, right? But it's never been a better time, essentially. Right. And I think that really helps because the US leads the world in kind of setting these standards. And it's the sort of SEC position that has become a lot more understanding of financial innovation in crypto is what's bleeding over internationally into all these other markets, right? And to Kevin's point, there was a lot of hesitation in some of those other markets, which is now, sort of melting. Right. And lightening up. So I'm really excited. I think this is a great time to be doing what we're all doing. And I think it's going to be a great next 3.5 years at least, and hopefully well beyond that. Now's the time to invest. Now's the time to build a solid base. Right. And now's the time to really, hit that that part of the curve, right, where you've got the hockey stick.
Oh, absolutely. It's exciting, and it just seems like all the stars are aligning for the industry.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the phrase that Kevin uses all the time as well.
Yeah.
Right, the stars are aligning. It's the point of the hockey stick going up, and you've got sort of this entire environment that is fueling that. And we've really never had that before in the history of crypto.
Yeah, I mean, from a lot of uncertainty to being attacked, is the saying, first they ignore you, they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you
Yes.
win, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Now they're
exactly.
jealous. But I think another big tell, Tony, is all the TradFi institutions, meaning banks, right, really starting to embrace and get involved. Right. They at first thought it was a joke, right? Then they felt competitive, right? And now they're embracing. And that's huge. Right. I mean, with the launch of the ETFs, especially the ability to approach all these new retail and institutional investors. I mean, I remember when I got started in 2014 and Bitcoin was, at around, I don't know, $100 or something like that. It was really hard to believe that we would get to this stage. And I'm just so proud of the entire industry that we have.
Adam, I'm not sure if you saw this news, you as well, Kevin, but I think it was just last week, JP Morgan, they capitulated and they're going to launch their deposit token on a public blockchain. Years ago, they tried to build a private permissioned wall garden, but it seems, I think they're all recognizing now, even BlackRock and these other folks, they're launching their tokenized treasuries on public blockchains, and that's the way to go. So I think that question's been answered. Will a
Yep.
private permission from the big banks take over? And obviously not.
A private blockchain is just a
Exactly.
database anyway. It's nothing but that, right? So you're right. But I think for them, it's an obvious business choice. It opens up business for them beyond their current customer base, right? And it's a huge financial opportunity. I think it just takes time for them to get comfortable with vetting sort of the seriousness of the market. I think seeing the inflows into the ETFs went into that sort of management decision that they made. And also, the SEC, the new SEC positioning, I think is really important for them as well. So that's it. And man, it really does feel like the snowball is really big right now, and it's not going away.
Kevin, this is a question for you. I don't know if it's the right thing to say a trend or this strategy, I should say, or the blueprint that Michael Saylor has put out there. How do you see your company, VivoPower, years from now? Is it more of a asset holding company, an XRP asset holding company and ecosystem, or still the ethos of what the company is about and what the services and products you provide?
I think we will evolve, and I think it will evolve beyond just an asset holding, XRP holding, XRP focused treasury company. But we will activate and build out more of the DeFi solution side of the equation. And our goal is to have value created as a result of that, number one, through sort of investing. As Adam mentioned, we have a VC side pocket sleeve to do that, but also to generate, revenues and fee income from some of these DeFi solutions that we've started to, invest in and build on. So I think it will morph into a revenue generating company, a yield generating company. That's the ultimate goal.
And just to add on to that, Tony, right? Like most of these treasury companies are focused on a net asset like Bitcoin or Ethereum. They don't have a native utility, right? And they're doing that because those assets, like Bitcoin, for example, are deemed a store of value. So it seems logical that that would be sort of the asset that you'd have in a treasury holding company, right? But actually, we believe that using a token which has real utility is even more powerful because we can influence that utility. And through that influence, by growing the ecosystem, we can influence the supply and demand of that token. Right. Michael Saylor is doing amazing things, but he can't, other than buying himself, right, or strategy buying, he can't influence the supply and demand directly, right, through business operations. We're going to be doing that and enabling a lot of other companies in the ecosystem to do that. So that's a real differentiator that we're excited about. And so when Kevin talks about sort of expanding, the role that VivoPower can play, I think that plays into it a lot as well.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated about how this changes the identity of certain companies and even their ethos. It's just fascinating in a good way. Not that it's anything bad. Just with this asset class and truly being global, and public companies around the world can do this. It's just fascinating to see how they morph and what they become.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, there really isn't a, well known, if you ask people about, okay, what's a Bitcoin treasury company, everyone knows MetaStrategy, or MicroStrategy and MetaPlanet in Tokyo. But if you ask people what's a listed DeFi solutions company, there really isn't one per se. So we'd like to be one of those, and that's the sort of long-term goal.
Mm. And as you build out the DeFi ecosystem, can both retail and institutions participate, or will certain things just be exclusive to, let's say, institutions?
No, I think the exercise here with respect to Vivo is to democratize that access, to a company that's doing not just asset management, if you will, but also building out DeFi solutions and investing in DeFi solutions. So anyone can invest by buying Vivo stock to gain exposure to that.
And then, of course, those solutions that we're going to help build in the ecosystem, I'm sure will also be available to other customers, right? And there would be no reason why they wouldn't be scalable to institutional and retail customers as well, right? But for right now, the Vivo stock is basically the proxy, right, for getting involved in supporting not only the underlying XRP asset, but the whole ecosystem growth.
Yeah, that's really great. I love the democratization that this technology provides, and a lot of people who are not able to get access to certain things now can, and just simply by having a smartphone and internet connection, they can participate. So it's really great. Obviously, you guys have a lot going on, a lot of developments. Anything you can share that's on the roadmap? I know some things may be under NDA and waiting for PR release, but what can we expect in the next 6 months or so?
Uh, we have a lot going on, and we're just very focused on execution. Tony, being listed, we have to be a bit careful, in terms of what we do say. But it's fair to say that in terms of the stated strategy with regards to XRP, we are going to be adding to reserves. We're not going to do it slavishly. We're going to do it in a smart way. And we've got a very experienced CFO, David Mansfield, ex-Goldman's, ex-JP Morgan, very disciplined guy. So we'll be judiciously building our XRP reserves. And then we've already started to look at investing and starting due diligence on DeFi projects and solutions that are part of Ripple's ecosystem, but also with regards to some of our existing businesses as well, leveraging XRPL and the ecosystem. So stay tuned. That there will be a lot of news, a lot of developments that we'll share.
That's exciting. I can't wait. And I know there's a lot of XRP holders and people in the XRP army who are, really excited about this and to watch this unfold and come to fruition. So really, really great stuff. Kevin, Adam, I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this. And, maybe we can do a round two as things progress.
Sounds good, Tony. Thanks again for having us on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Tony. Have a great day.